All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. I'm Andrea Mansfield, Chair of the Charter Revision Commission. We have 4 members with us right now, so we do have a quorum. Ms. Hangleiter, unfortunately, is not able to be with us tonight. Mr. Fleckenstein is on his way, and I know Mr. Snow, he will be here probably in about 10 minutes, I believe. So we're going to go ahead and we'll get started. All right, so first I'm going to wish David a happy birthday. I'm sorry, or Mr. Kaufman, Commissioner Kaufman, a happy birthday. We're happy to have you with us tonight. Thank you.
David Kaufman, thank you.
And if we want to go ahead, I guess a couple quick comments before we approve our agenda and our minutes. I want to thank the staff for putting all these maps together and the hard work you put in over the last week to do that for us tonight. As you know, at the last meeting, we discussed what our process would be as far as requests for maps and iterations and so forth, and we discussed that we would have those conversations during our meeting. That way it was very clear to planning and zoning what those requests would be. We could summarize them at the end of the meeting, and then they would know what their work plan would be until our next meeting. So I'd ask if you have questions about maps or the information that you would like, that we keep those conversations here in our public meetings. Also to let the public know what we're discussing. Other types of requests or questions that you may have, copies of documents and things like that, feel free to send those to me. I'll coordinate those with Ms. Colby. That way we have it's an easy line of communication for that information. So with that, I think all of us, we have the agenda in front of us. Anyone have any comments on the agenda? Changes? If not, could I get a motion to approve our agenda?
Second.
Second. All right, thank you very much. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, our agenda is approved. And then you also have in front of you a copy of the meeting minutes from the last meeting. And does anyone have any comments or questions they'd like to the meeting minutes? All right, seeing none. Or actually, Mr. Waddy?
I have no questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your light was on. Okay, great. Okay, can I get a motion then to approve our meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Going to get a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Telford. Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. All right. Well, then I guess we can just jump right in. I'll just turn it over to Planning and Zoning. I know we have Mr. Kai Ziegler with us and Mr. Burt, and they're going to do a presentation on the maps that they have prepared for us and talk through the various iterations that we have. So thank you, Mr. Burt. Go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. Mark Burt, Office of Planning and Zoning. Tonight, I want to go through a couple scenarios or adjustment plans that have been developed for redistricting in Arundel County. So first, we'll touch on a little bit about Esri Redistricting, talk about that online software program. I know we talked a little bit about it last week. Dive a little bit more into how that software is set up, the different statistics you can get, statistics reports and whatnot, and then talk about the base scenario that was created. And then the 4 initial adjustment plans, we'll get into those and talk about those. So first I want to talk a little bit about Ezra Redistricting. Ezra Redistricting is a software, an online software that assists state and local governments, advocacy groups, and the general public in drawing legislative and congressional redistricting plans following the 2020 U.S. Census. So what's really nice about the Esri Redistricting platform, that it does bring in the census data adjusted for the state of Maryland. So it does have access to that. The foundation of Esri Redistricting is based on Esri's proven ArcGIS platform. All the data sets and components are industry standards. The ArcGIS software provides comprehensive features and functionality for plan management, visualization, and editing these redistricting plans. So the redistricting plans are easily created using this interface here. The plans are simply created through use of these tools and an easy to follow workflow within the software. So once you have a user account, you can log in and you can start to create districts almost automatically. Using the draw tools, and you create your districts and start to develop summary tables. You can review your data in the form of reports, charts. You can check the integrity of your districts. You can write in map notes. And to share the plans out, you can create groups and invite partners in. Unfortunately, the way it's set up, we don't have access to this part of it. We'll be doing some public outreach outside of Esri Redistricting. Esri Redistricting uses a two-stage assignment of census geographies that allows districts to be easily created, reviewed, and updated. So that first assignment is a very large-scale assignment. You can circle a whole district, assign all the census geographies to it, and if you captured some that are outside of your boundary, you can remove those from your selection. It's very, very easy. So that first stage assignment is that gross assignment, and then the second stage is that fine adjustment that you can make. The council districts in the adjustment scenarios were developed in these adjustment scenarios that we'll be viewing, the adjustment scenarios that we'll be viewing tonight were developed using the adjusted 2020 census population data at the block level. Community boundaries from Plan 2040 or from the General Development Plan and target deviation from the ideal population were also used in developing these adjustment scenarios. Esri Redistricting gives you tons of data points, a couple I just hit on, a total adjusted population, a target population that you would want to hit for each of your districts, a target deviation, and that target deviation you can set based on your parameters. For the parameters that we used or that were used in these scenarios was a 10% deviation from that ideal or target population. Adjusted populations and percentages of population for every race and ethnicity category we have for the county as a whole, for each district, and for voting age population of 18 and older. So we can drill down and look at specific target populations if we like. So now I'd like to get into the first scenario, which would be the base scenario or the existing conditions. In this map you see here, it displays the current census council districts with the 2020 census blocks. No adjustments have been made here. It's just straight information. This is the base for all of our scenarios moving forward. So in this scenario, or in this base scenario, here's the population for each district, 1 through 7, with the total population in this scenario of 585,427. And an ideal population of 83,633. Now, in the table that Ms. Pompa sent out, it did say a target population or an ideal district population of 83,632. That's because we rounded down in our numbers and the software rounds up. So that's the account for that difference. Any other differences in the tables were based on grabbing census geographies in the program. And any of those errors were 1 or 2 off. So in this base scenario, we can see here that District 1 has a deviation from the ideal population of over 6,000 people, or over 7.27%, which is above the 5% threshold that we like to set. So there were 3 districts that currently meet the ideal population. Those districts are 2, 3, and 7. District 4 has a deviation of plus 7,985 people, or a deviation percentage of 9.55%. District 5 and 6 have a negative deviation from the ideal population. So what we're looking to do in some of these scenarios is to bring down the population of districts 4 and 1 and increase the populations of 5 and 6 to bring them closer to that ideal population. So in adjustment plan number 1, this plan is based on the 2020 adjusted population with a 10% target deviation. A balanced approach to distribution of census blocks between all districts to bring the population of each district within a 10% difference of the ideal population was the goal of this scenario. You can see from the table on the right that each district achieved that goal in decreasing, either increasing or decreasing their population. This is a comparison of that base scenario to the adjustment plan number 1. It's a little bit hard to see the differences there, so it's a little bit easier to see the differences here. You can see in this scenario, District 1 lost 6, had a change of minus 6,000 people. Well, the greatest increase was District 6 of 6,485 people. And District 4 decreased the most to even out. And we can take a look again at the adjusted numbers. It brings every district pretty close to that target population, or that ideal population of 83,633. Notable changes to the districts were to District 2 in the blue. District 2 changed to its southern border into District 4, former District 4, part of District 1, and part of District 3. District 5 boundary also changed, moving north into District 4, or District 2, I'm sorry. District 6 also changed, moving north into District 4. District 7 also changed, taking part of District 6 on the northeastern boundary and expanding northwest into District 4. And District 4 did move a little north into District 1 on its northwestern border. Are there any questions about Adjustment Plan 1?
Yeah, so Mr. Telford, go ahead. I'll follow up.
Larry Telford. Mr. Burt, in general, with these 4 adjustment plans, have we moved any current incumbents out of one council district into another? Have we looked at that?
No, that was not a consideration in these scenarios. It was just something I didn't look at.
Okay. Thanks.
So I guess I'm Mr. Burt, Andrea Mansfield. I'm just curious, so as you shifted the lines, I was just trying to see, so when you took District 7 and you moved more into District 4, like, I guess I assume that went into Crofton, did it take more of Crofton? Like how?
No, so that in reading the 2011 report, I did read that, they wanted to keep Crofton in one district, preferably,
Okay.
and to try to preserve the rural characteristic of 7. So you can see here in this graphic here, the community boundaries from the general plan are displayed in black and labeled here. So Crofton is this piece right here. This is also Crofton. So I did not bring that in to number 7. I did go into Two Rivers, the Two Rivers neighborhood, and try to bring the complete Two Rivers neighborhood into District 7. One of the goals was to, if there were census tracts going to come into a district, that if it was in a neighborhood, to try to keep the whole neighborhood together and bring all those census tracts in,
Okay,
if
that makes sense.
feasible.
So do any of the charts we have the various communities identified on them? Or if not, could we get those charts as well? So we could, because I'm just curious as to how, as the lines shifted, like with the communities, how, like what's being brought in,
Yeah,
what's maybe being pushed into another. Because then, and I know, so District 6 moved into, took over some of District 4. So what did you encompass when you moved that direction? More of, I assume, more of Crownsville to a certain
Yes,
extent?
it was more almost the whole Crownsville, what's identified as Crownsville. So this whole yellow area is District 6. The red line here is the current district boundary. So including all of these census geographies up to, I forget what highway that is, my apologies, all the way up to this road here. My apologies, I can't recall which one that was.
General's hot, well, no.
I can find out which one it is.
Or Veterans Highway, maybe, or General's part of that? Okay.
But it did bring all of Crownsville into 6 and a little slice of Millersville here south of the highway.
Okay. And then District 3, that shifted, well, some into 4.
Yeah, District 3, just a little shift of District 3. There was a little shift with 2 and 3, right here on the edge. So some of these census tracts came in and some came out. It was kind of based on the geography and trying to balance out population.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, David Kaufman here. I first off, thank you for having this and showing this for us. But I would, I think, encourage us to remember that so far, what we're seeing right now is just an illustration of how population is assigned. And as we're moving this conversation forward, for us to remember that it's our understanding of our communities that will then move the next set of lines. But this is, if I'm remembering last week's meeting correctly, this is perhaps the worst model that you were suggesting we would pursue, which is the one that just computer generates and makes everything even, and this is the least likely to actually be the thing that we do because it doesn't actually take into consideration all of our community understandings. What would help me is, and you kind of started getting into that with, well, which street is that when we're zooming in, if we're able to get into a level, because that's for me how I'm going to be able to place what part of Crofton is in that particular area. So that may be the next slide down, and I can just mute here, but I just wanted to.
If I could add, that made an excellent point, Steve Ziegler, Planning and Zoning Office. Right now what you're getting is distribution of the base population. There is no layers below it, and you're right. It is probably the least likely one, but it is where one starts, and it becomes an iterative process. I'm also thinking, Mark, we didn't do it for these. Every time we have a meeting, we'll learn a better way to show the next set of geographic depictions. I'm thinking that when we show different types of adjustment plans, that when part of a district moves to another, we'll have a little key that just lays out, here is like, if there are neighborhoods that we can point to, divided by this road, just a little explanation in writing on each of the major shifts of population from one district to another.
David Kaufman again. For me, the heat map mindset is probably the thing that's going to be most helpful, because that's going to allow us to concentrate our discussion around where population changes took place in our county, because that's really what constituents are going to be able to respond and relate to, is that the reason a change occurred was because there was a shift in population that was, 20% or 10% in one way or the other. And that's going to be what's going to help me as we're having these conversations, so that we can, talk about how the character identity of a community is represented in the map that we end up drawing.
Okay, thank you. And also, I like the idea of your suggestion of a key, too. I think that would be helpful as we see things move. But thank you.
We didn't think about it before. Sorry about that.
It was a great idea, right on the fly. Very nice.
Larry Telfer, Mr. Burt, what units are we using to move these around? Are these census blocks, or these political precincts, or census blocks?
Good question. Mark Burt, Office of Planning and Zoning. We are using the 2020 adjusted census blocks, smallest unit of census geography at this point.
Okay. And once a final map is actually recommended and sent to the council, is that when precincts are actually determined? Is that because you can't have precincts splitting out over council districts, can you?
I'm not sure if I understood the question.
Yeah.
Well, there's precincts where we vote, and does the precinct have to be within the boundaries of the council district? In other words, can you have precinct? I mean, every precinct we have in Anne Arundel County is actually based on the county council lines. Like there's where I live, 5-1, 5-2, 5-3, all the way up to 524. It doesn't bleed into 6. It doesn't bleed into 3. Now, the state Senate lines go all over the place, but it's probably not an appropriate question at this time, and I'm just curious, once we create a map, I would assume we go backwards, and that's when we start actually redrawing the precincts, which obviously are going to have to change since the map is changing itself.
Yeah.
Kelly County Supervising County Attorney, I think that is mainly done by the Board of Elections. That was part of what we had touched on, I think, 2 meetings ago, about the involvement that we need with the state and with the Board of Elections when we're doing this process, to look through everything and make sure that they have enough time to redraw those as they need to.
Okay, thanks.
Tory Snow, is it traditional for the Board of Elections to offer input on a map, specifically with relation to polling places? And because that's a big concern these days, is how long the lines are, and I don't know, just do they usually have a role in the discussion at all?
Kelly County Supervising County Attorney. I think we don't fully know the answer to that question yet. We have had some initial discussions with them, and Ms. Corby may know a little bit more. I don't think that they weigh in necessarily in saying you can't draw the lines that way, but you may get some input from them as you go through the process that may or may not be helpful. But we certainly need to engage them a little bit more as we move through this process to make sure that we're incorporating their whatever they need into the process as well.
Perhaps as a follow-up or perhaps a clarification, are there considerations or issues that they are aware of that they could perhaps raise to our awareness, like as they do the polling places? Maybe we can get insights, and maybe other commissioners can chime in on if we would be interested in getting that kind of input to make sure that we're considering things like the quality of voting for a particular community.
Mr. Kaufman?
David Kaufman, I hope I'm not oversimplifying this, but if a councilmanic district changes because the population density warrants a change in the district, to me, it just stands to reason that the people in that population would still be able to vote in that district. It just would be, instead of a District 7 polling place, it would be a District 5, it just would change the district. I mean, am I oversimplifying how that process would be? But we're not saying that you can't vote at that location, and we're not saying that it should stay in the current assignment. But if I'm in Crofton and I was, let's say Crownsville, using this particular example, if I was previously in District 4, but now I'm going to be in District 6, and the location of one of the polling places that was in District 4 is now in 6, would it not just move to District 6 as a location? Or am I simply not understanding that process?
Kelly Kenny, Supervising County Attorney. I do not know the ins and outs of that process either. I don't think that that's something right now that this commission has to really, be concerned with at this point. I think that if you go through the process of redrawing the lines, the process works itself out, and that's for the Board of Elections to determine who votes where and how that works.
Right. Thank you. Andrea Mansfield. Yeah, I was going to kind of suggest, I'm not sure that's really an appropriate role for our commission in general. I mean, and by the little bit of knowledge I do have of how they determine where polling places are going to be, I think really the Board of Elections takes that up. They have a group, they look at that, they try to balance it out based on population and so forth to ensure everyone has access to the locations. So I'm not sure that's really a role or something that we should be taking on at this point in time either. So. Sorry, Mr. Burt, go ahead.
Thank you. Mark Burt, Office of Planning and Zoning. So the question about what road this was, it's 97, Crane Highway, Veterans Highway, that goes down through. Is that 97? No, yeah. No, Veterans Highway, my apologies. So if there are no questions or comments on Adjustment Plan 1, we'll move to Adjustment Plan 2. Adjustment Plan 2 is based on the 2020 adjusted census population with a 10% target deviation, addressing the need to decrease the percent deviation from the ideal population of District 1 and 4. That was the goal of this one. This was achieved by increasing the populations of District 5 and 6 to become closer to the ideal. So with this plan, it was set up the same way as the other ones, same geographies and whatnot. So you can see here, try to even out again, trying to move the populations more closer to the ideal population, decreasing the deviation for almost every district here. So again, here's the look between the base scenario and Adjustment Plan 2, just that overview. And here is the adjustment to the population. Now, this goes back to adjust in the, in the base scenario, readjusting the populations for 4 and District 1 to come under that 5% threshold and bringing 5 and 6 up under that 5% threshold. This was achieved by moving 6,752 residents out of 1 and 4,187 out of 2, and moving 5,611 into 5 and 8,329 into 6. Again, here's the map with the chart. You can see 6 gained a lot in its northern part, and 5 moved out into, moved west.
Mr. Kaufman.
David Kaufman. So did you say that District 1 reduced by 6,000 by that small little?
Yep.
Okay.
This right here.
Mark, how much can you blow that up?
Yep.
This is it for this. I can go into.
That's why we'll do the key the next time. We'll explain what it is.
If you just bear with me here, I'll go to a web map that I have. I'm trying to treat this as a second screen, and it's just not working. Actually, I'll come up there and switch over.
I would end up with Netflix.
That's what I'm hoping it doesn't go to Netflix. Okay. All right, so we're looking at scenario 2. This is one of the web maps that I've developed that I'm working with our information technology group or the Office of Information Technology to have added to our portal. So you were wondering how many people did that little area add?
Sorry, David
okay.
Kaufman.
Go ahead.
So we knew what the number was. I just didn't know what the community. I couldn't identify the community.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. Actually, I don't have that layer in.
And that's okay. We will have fixed this for our next meeting.
Yeah, definitely. We can switch back. What's that, Laura?
I said, I'm sorry. We should have the remote control. But like most remote controls, they got lost in the couch.
Or the battery's dead.
Now we're going to YouTube.
I did want to say, Stephen Waddy, it was interesting that the elementary school was in one district, and then the district line was in a different district, and it just shows the baseline nature of this discussion. Because the students at Van Bachlen, I live like right around the corner from there in Severn, and the students at Van Bachlen Elementary also are pulled from the district right there.
Mark Burt from Office of Planning and Zoning. District 4 did take up some of District 1 here on District 4's northwestern boundary. District 2 did expand a little bit into District 1 on the edge, on the northwestern edge, right on the southwestern corner of BWI. And District 3 took a little bit into District 2. Okay. Were there any other questions or comments on Adjustment Plan 2? Okay, we'll move to Adjustment Plan 3. Let me get back to my notes. Okay, my apologies there. All right. Wait, did we go through 3? No, we went through 2. Okay. So, again, 3 is, Adjustment Plan 3 is based on the 2020 adjusted census population with a 10% deviation, target deviation from the ideal population. The ideal population, again, in this scenario was 83,633. This scenario was another attempt to even out the districts and bring them closer to the target population. In this one, the goal was to still increase the populations of 5 and 6 and address the population concerns of 5 and 7, or increase the deviation of 7 also. This was accomplished by expanding District 5 to the west, expanding District 6 to the north, expanding District 7 into District 6 to the east and into District 4 in the west and in the northeastern part. We can see here how this adjustment plan compares to the baseline scenario, bringing all districts within the 10% deviation. Here we can see every district the gains and losses in population between the adjusted population and the adjustment plan. Again, the adjustment plan there. And here's the map with the community boundaries and the current districts and the adjusted blocks. You can see here, some of the Gambrels neighborhood, or not Gambrels, but Millersville area going into District 6 and into District 5. Some of Severn going into 5.
So if I could just suggest, Steve Ziegler, Planning and Zoning Officer. So Mr. Burt has prepared 4 different adjustment plans. What that means is that's really, you have to look at 4 different adjustment plans times 7 districts. So there's going to be 28 of these scenarios that we're looking at. And that might take a significant amount of time, and working off just the base population is going to tell us some things, but probably not anywhere near what we really want to see. And I'm going to suggest we at least go through the first adjustment plan, but you may want to start weighing in on adjustment plans 2, 3, 4, because we'll probably be here for quite a period of time. Because what Mark has done, he's looked at, from a planner's perspective, how do I equalize the population? What would make sense as a planner, not taking into account anything other than population at this point? So I'll leave it up to you. We can go through all 28 of these. We're on number 4 now. That might take considerable time.
This is the last map adjustment I have right now, though.
Mr. Snell? Go ahead.
Yes. So I did want, I don't know, did I miss an email? I believe I got an email today while I was at work on these maps, and if we had, ideally, I'd like to be able to, look at the map, review it, kind of process it, and then come to the meeting prepared with feedback and commentary. So did I miss an email, or did it come in this afternoon?
No, I think, we received an email later this afternoon with these iterations in the maps.
So I think that, to your point, kind of just reacting to them in this forum at this point in time is not going to yield the productive results that we're really hoping to, especially with our tight timeline. So, it's really good, and I think I'd, like a few days to at least process it and review it and kind of look through having the overlays for the community. Then I definitely feel like I could provide better feedback as opposed to just going through it piece by piece tonight.
One of the difficulties is going to be, though, with the frequency of your meetings, our ability to generate the work that you could review before a meeting, and that's what we're going to struggle with. I know Mark was working on these Friday night and over the weekend for a Monday night meeting, and so that's just going to be a reality of what we can produce in the time period that we have.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Another thing to think about is getting to these Monday meetings, getting the presentation, seeing the maps, and then maybe we can work in some virtual meetings as well for you all that maybe could help to allow a little more discussion in the middle and allow OPZ to have time to be ready for the next in-person meeting. So just playing around with some of that. We can always do that, even if it's an hour one morning. Maybe we can try to squeeze something in. We can get it set up. It can be visible by the public and all of those things that we need. So I'm here to help make that happen if that would be helpful to you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Snow?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's pretty much exactly, the idea of being able to review it, talk, think over it. I mean, I don't even mind the intervals, to be honest. I just feel like with all of us kind of looking through it throughout the week, then when we come to our meetings, then we can say, we noticed this, we have this specific question, and that way, you could save some time by not having to do a walkthrough of everything. The legwork is on us to basically tell you what we'd like to see or how we'd like to see things tweaked. So that's all.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes, David Kaufman. So as far as images are concerned, when like I'm looking at my computer and I'm zooming in on the what this isn't, and I'm having the same struggle that I am looking at it on here. It's I almost need a side-by-side, whether it's a Google map or some other, some element where I can actually, but when you showed the image in the overlay the way that you did, that was the most meaningful imagery that I had in the course of the discussion. What I think might be valuable during the time that we have here is there are a couple of conceptual actions that are on this that are discussed here. The expansion of 5 and the expansion of 6 and how that occurs, or if it does, those are conversations that we might be able to have to inform the review of our data. If we're wanting, is it important to this commission to equalize 5 and 6, and by doing so, we see on the maps here how much westward movement occurs in 5s, for instance. Those, I'd be interested in hearing, the thoughts of members on the commission as I'm then going and looking at the, whatever information I've got between now and our next get-together. That would be helpful for me if there are people that have any philosophical concerns about the expansion of 1 down, southward, or like those are things that, from a community's discussion standpoint, would be helpful for me because I'm living in, I've only resided in 2 of the districts in Anne Arundel County, and that's, I guess, why we're all here to represent each of the different districts.
I'm almost wondering, too, if you don't mind, because there's a planning and zoning officer, is that the way that, and we're learning as we go along, but the way that we're showing information now is fairly global for the whole county. We're showing all 7 districts, and perhaps what we need to do when we're talking about any form of equalizing, we do a pullout and blow that up that has the key, and it's presented in a larger view so you can actually see the neighborhood and perhaps the base demographic shifts that are occurring as a result of it. I think we can expand upon the work that Mark has done, which would be much easier to talk about and contemplate if it makes sense to do that.
And David Kaufman again, I do want to be clear. I appreciate and value and understand the extensive work that just got us to this point to be able to have this discussion. So it's not a dismissal of the work that's been done, but obviously, given the time frame that we've tried to identify, just want to make sure that we can do it efficiently.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Snow? Go ahead.
Sure. Well, actually, in the interest of that, I'm happy to provide just some initial thoughts. Tori Snow, by the way. When I have been looking at these maps and looking at having these guidelines and kind of reviewing where we're headed, one of the big concerns philosophically that I have been thinking about is Western Anne Arundel County, the Russet communities, Pioneer City, those parts of the county which typically are absorbed by other aspects of Anne Arundel County. And so I'm a little concerned that we're just, and obviously the goal was to do just adjustments, but I really feel like maybe we ought to fundamentally reevaluate whether this is a good model, especially how dramatically our county has changed. You saw the numbers, it is dramatic. And so the idea that we can just, kind of snip and adjust, for me, it kind of glances off a little wrong. I'm thinking, and even Commissioner Waddy had mentioned, Still Meadows and that whole community just cut off from its own school. It might be wise for us to reconsider what more we can do to give Western Anne Arundel County stronger voice, stronger representation, and really those communities a voice, in how they're governed. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Okay, whoops, thank you. Yeah, I think, obviously West County is an area that I'm concerned with too, just because of the population growth there. I guess too, I would like to say, I think what Mr. Kaufman is suggesting works well, but I'm having a hard time just because not knowing exactly where the communities of interest are and how they are affected and they move within each of these iterations. I'm having a hard time really, honestly, in some ways knowing what to ask right now, because I just, I'm not sure how Gambrels or Crownsville or Millersville or these areas are being shifted within these 4 iterations. So I think I feel like I need a little bit more information, maybe the key that you were suggesting, Mr. Kai-Ziegler, which I think is a great idea. That way it can help us. I also like what you're suggesting, maybe we pull them out and do the comparisons by district. That way we can really see how things have shifted and what's moving in and what's moving out. I think that might be helpful and aid in our discussion here. But generally, but yes, I would have to agree. But thank you. I know these were not easy to pull together. I guess one other quick question, because I know in some of these charts that you have, you're showing it broken down by demographics or race and so forth. I guess, is that something you can also show us when you rerun and you look at communities of interest? Could you also show us how, there's shifts in the racial breakdown of each of the districts as well, kind of compared to where they are now?
Yeah, Mark Burt, Planning and Zoning. Yeah, that is something that can be shown. If you like, we can get into each one of these scenarios or open up Esri Redistricting and start a scenario tonight that, based on different demographics, you can start looking at those, and they'll be on the screen for everyone to see, and we can start moving lines if you would want, or drawing districts that you would feel appropriate if you feel that would be productive for tonight.
Okay. Mr. Waddy? Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen Waddy. I was philosophically concerned about District 3, and District 3's basic, it doesn't really move at all, and I think District 3 for me has been an area that may justify a little bit, creeping a little bit further west or south to be able to get a better thought about representation. It's about how District 3 is represented on the council. It makes me wonder, and at the school board especially, it makes me wonder if keeping it at the same, basically at the same lines. The lines barely move for District 3. Whereas District 1 and District 4, I think all the other districts in this adjustment plan, they move significantly. Whereas District 3 maintains sort of the same voting base, the same population statistics, across each of these various, despite the major growth that's gone on. Philosophically, if I'm talking about these things, I'm thinking about race, and I'm thinking about representation on the council, I'm thinking about representation on the school board, and I don't think about race as being colorblind, like these maps are colorblind. I also think about the boundaries that may be physical boundaries that are addressing them, because clearly the Bay is the boundary that we have to think about the most in terms of District 3, District 5, 6, and 7. We're thinking about the Bay, and there's nothing but that. So, how do I address the fact that? And then I'm also thinking about the planning and zoning of this county has since the 70s pushed development into West County. You know, West County has been the majority, West and North County have been the areas that development has been mostly pushed for, as Plan 2040 I think kind of describes in its preamble. They describe how planning and zoning went for a while, for a long time. And I'm looking at that, I'm looking at those things and how the fact that the zoning in that area affects tax bases, how it affects school systems. Overcrowded schools is really one thing that I'm definitely thinking about, is how overcrowded the schools are. I did see that the county council passed something last year that they were dealing with adequate space, and you couldn't do a certain amount of development if the percentage of the school that was of the population was over a particular percentage. And how much of that is West County, how much of it is, South County, how much was, those are the other things I'm thinking about. And that's why I asked those things, if we could have that kind of overlaid on the map. I'm not saying, we need to have it today, but it's definitely on my mind when I look at the maps and how to think about some of these districts.
Mr. Kai Ziegler.
Thank you. Steve Kai Ziegler, Planning and Zoning Officer. Just a couple of thoughts. One is just reminding everyone about what the core task is, and that's redistricting for political purposes. The other things are interesting, but I'm not sure how they influence the geographic boundaries of what will be future councilmatic districts. Mr. Waddy, on what's called school APF, public school APF, there's always a lot of bills floating around that are typically coming through the council that would modify it in some way, shape, or form. Just a little bit of information for the group, though, is that within our public school system, while we have some number of schools that are overcrowded, we have many more schools that are way under capacity. We're sitting on about 10,000 vacant seats within the whole county school system. That's about 15% of all the seats there are no kids in. And so the reason that has happened is because we have such great difficulty through an elected Board of Ed in actually redistricting to accommodate those vacant seats. We have a really large public school APF work group. It's an effort I'm leading. You may find it interesting. We have a shared drive. We've had 10 meetings. We're going to probably propose sooner than later a radical overhaul. But the reality is the county doesn't have a capacity issue with schools. We're choosing not to deal with it. And that may be an unpopular thing to say, but it's reality. What I'm thinking, if I get just a couple more thoughts, is that we're probably at the point where we're having the real conversation. With what Mr. Byrd is showing, we're showing an equal distribution of the population without taking into account what that population is. And I think, Mr. Waddy, that's what you're getting at. Mr. Snow, that's what you're getting at. We can show different scenarios, if you would like, that refine these districts in a way that takes into account demographic information. And I think that's what you're going to be asking us to do. We knew that it was really just a matter of time before we got to this part of the discussion. And when is our next meeting, Ms. Laura?
Monday, the 29th.
Okay, that doesn't leave us with much work time. But we know we have to produce them, and we can give you, I'm going to say more exact, I'm going to say adjustment options that would, again, part of it would take into account as a whole the average breakout of the population, the demographics. Others would be adjustment options that would move parts of the population into one district and take them out of another, that would change the way voting might work. But I think we're at the point where we need to probably start preparing some of that for you to consider.
Mr. Kaufman, go ahead.
Yes, David Kaufman. So two things. First off, with regards to the school conversation, this is the first time Anne Arundel County is going to have as consequential an impact on school discussions by the virtue of our work, because for the first time, our work is going to be part and parcel with the elected school board districts, which was not the case previously. Now there were districts before, but my understanding is, but the nature of election in that environment is very consequential. So I don't want to understate the importance of the work we're doing as it is, because obviously the councilmanic districts mirror what the school board districts are, so that's going to end up being consequential in that space. The other issue, I think to Commissioner Snow's point, we're really confronted with, and as Commissioner Waddy was addressing, pretty much the lack of change in District 3, we really are taking an approach that is start at each of the points, work your way in, and decide what the mess is going to be in the middle as to whether or not the districts change, okay? And I'm wholly aware that a philosophical discussion that says, maybe, and listen, I'm just making it. I'm not making a suggestion here, but maybe the westernmost parts of 5 and 6 are a district, or maybe maybe 7 is actually 2 districts because of the geographic space, and we end up. There's a lot of issues there's a lot of approaches that we can address the change that you're discussing, but that is enormous, because then we're not just talking about going ahead and fixing the population shifts. We're talking about a cataclysmic change in our structure as a county, and that's fine, but that's not fine to have by the end of next month. So I mentioned in the first meeting, I'm not seeking expedience. I want to make sure that we get it right. But there's also lots of reasons why we've started at the outsides and worked our way in, because there are lots of community similarities that align within those peninsular spaces and activities. And so I don't know. That's a big lift, because if one of the other concerns we have, of course, is making sure that we're not affording one district disproportionate say on the council, because we're giving a much smaller demographic or smaller number of people, because we're trying to control how many people get to be in a district. But the fewer people that are in a district, they still have 1/7 of the vote at the council table. So that's as weighty to consider in how we change that representation.
Mr. Snow?
That was very interesting. Tori Snow, by the way, that you mentioned what you did, because just kind of experimenting with the data tools that were out there, using some of the open source tools. If you look at a heat map of where our populations are, and specifically our minority voices, you will see that many of them are concentrated in the western part of Anne Arundel County. And what has happened thus far is that those communities, and I don't know if this is intentional, it has been intentional in other places, but those communities are taken and split up in such a way that they feed the voting power of other districts. And that's part of the reason that we have such a profound population of African Americans in Anne Arundel County, but it's very difficult to get one onto the council seat. And so I actually just kind of spitballed just some ideas, just working through some open source tools, and looked at a model that did exactly as you said. It re-examined what the Western District of Anne Arundel County could theoretically look like if we created community-style representations that allowed there to be a significant level of representation in some of those communities that typically don't get as much attention. And this is, I mean, even if you look at the GDP, if you look at Plan 2040, a lot of the feedback centered on the fact that it's really hard to get our issues prioritized in West County because they're competing with Central County and they're competing with the coastal communities and things like that. So I actually did draft up or print out something that I kind of spitballed at like 2 o'clock in the morning with a cup of coffee, with something that I thought looked reasonable. I brought some extra copies if the other commissioners are interested in seeing it, but it would basically pretty much do exactly, I don't know if it was premature for that. I wanted to see what you all had to offer, but I just wanted to get the disposition from the other commissioners if they were interested in seeing at least what I'd kind of drafted up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Snow. I guess I would just say I think we need to be careful, though, because technically we need to use the census data, and I think planning and zoning is there are experts in doing this. So I think we need to be careful how we bring in other tools and sources and things like that. And Mr. Kai-Ziegler?
So I may be able to help with this, though, that I think you'll like. Steve Kai-Ziegler, Planning and Zoning Officer. So in anticipation of this discussion and question, we're trying to think how can we sort of stay ahead of you to staff and support you. We are thinking along the same lines as an option for you to consider, and that would be that in a district, we can, I'm going to say, redraw the lines in such a way that I'm going to say a certain group, a minority group, could be over 50% of the population. It's a little more complicated if you think in terms of voting public, but we can do that, and it doesn't look that crazy. So we might be thinking along the same lines. We anticipated you'd be asking this question anyway, and I don't know if we'll have that ready for Monday.
Actually, the adjustment plan number 4 kind of addresses that, race and ethnicity question. If you want me to quickly review that one.
I'm going to suggest we do that. I was only thinking at this is the full adjustment plan for it.
Yeah. This is adjustment plan for Mark Burt, Office of Planning and Zoning. This is adjustment plan number 4. It is based on the 2020 adjusted population with a 10% deviation. This plan does look at the deviation from the ideal district population and tries to bring all districts in line, increasing the population of a couple of the districts and trying to balance or increase race and ethnicity throughout. Honestly, I'm not sure if this plan worked out or not. It was just an idea looking at how race and ethnicity were being distributed in the county. So here is the chart that shows the difference in population between the adjusted population and the adjusted Plan 4, or the adjustment Plan 4. You can see District 4 losing a pretty substantial population, having it redistributed. Now you would think, seeing District 4 losing 10,000 people, you would think that would be a huge change in their boundary, and that was just 2 communities being added onto District 2, and then some community, the boundary of District 2 coming into District 5 and into District 4 and 1. So here's the race and ethnicity population breakdown from this adjustment plan number 4. I didn't run this for all the other ones, and I realized that after the fact and ran it. So those reports are in your packets. They're not structured the same way, but the data is in there for each district.
Mr. Snow, do you have a question?
If
How do you
I
want to
were to, Tori Snow, if I were to send your team the tool that I'm using, because it does use this the latest census data and all that stuff, I think it only goes down to the area level, but if I were to send your team with the approval of the commission something to draft up for discussion, is that something you could do?
I want to say we'd like to be able, but I can't until we know what it
Sure.
is. We're not sure it works, but we're not opposed
But
to
in
trying to
theory,
do that.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I guess for commission members, is everyone comfortable with him sending his data tool to, okay, I guess we'll send it through Laura? Okay, okay, great.
Yeah, I totally, I'm sorry, David Coffin here. I totally appreciate the offering an alternative lens to review the data, and I appreciate that your office is capable of assessing which information we're allowed to, like, I'm not concerned that what he's going to be sending you is something that's going to be unusable in any informed way, because you can apply the information even if the tool itself isn't the thing that's applicable. The information you garner from that tool is going to have some minor basic variation, but you know, again, it captures philosophically, like, to me, I think that we're still just trying to get our hands around this big, like a big Jello mold, and we're trying to figure out how to tackle the problems, and we've not yet really formalized the problems that we're trying to tackle.
So Mark Bird, Office of Planning and Zoning. What we have on the screen right now is the Esri Redistricting software with the base scenario, so the districts as is currently. We're currently looking at the theme of the standard set of data, which is just, all the data sets and the non-Hispanic, Latino, Black theme. We can switch these between any of the themes and see which way the population is being distributed throughout the county. We can also take a look at universal population, which would just be the totals. Can update the theme, close the box, and we can see the total population in each one of the census blocks there on the map. So if I go ahead and unhide District 1, we can see it right. See there, the district line comes in black. It is filled with a red fill that can be changed. So if we were to say we want to change the district line, what we can do, I do have the community boundaries in here, so we can turn those on. And if we wanted to see which community was which, I can go in and identify the different communities. Oh. Where's my identifier? So if we wanted to see what this community was right here, I need more real estate on the screen, my apologies. You can see that's the larger Severn neighborhood. What was considered Severn for the GDP. So we can start to see where these lines are being moved to. My apologies that those lines weren't turned on in the materials that you were provided this evening. So if there are questions throughout the week when you're reviewing your materials, we can refer back to this source data and take a look at it.
So I guess I want our time to be most productive, and so I'm gonna, as we go forward here, I guess if anyone has comments or more from a philosophical perspective of what you see here, but I guess I would.
David Kaufman, something that would be helpful for me as we're looking, so we're thinking about changes that we need to make, but if we even just have heat maps that are the just current population densities in the county with the overlays. Hold on. Excuse me. And maybe even without, maybe what we need is that population density absent the overlay, to Commissioner Snow and Commissioner Waddy's point, to be able to look at our communities as they naturally exist without placing the grid over it, to be able to see where we have major concentrations of population, and if we're able to identify what the mix within that community is. Listen, I don't necessarily relish the notion of blowing everything up and starting from scratch at this, because I believe that there's been, not all of the work that has, and I don't just mean this year, I mean over the years, there have been a lot of people who have had more than just 3 meetings of conversations to get to the point where this exists. At the same time, we also have generations of issues that we'd like to also tackle when we have an opportunity. If we've got population density and then growth, variation from the last census, pockets where we've seen attrition or high density growth within areas. I mean, we talk about West County has had a great deal of growth, but specifically in what areas of West County may define where the representation and what's homogeneous in that community area to define a district. That for me would be helpful, because it informs where our communities naturally exist without starting at the councilmanic geography.
So I guess, question to Mr. Kaufman, are you suggesting that we would not do the overlay with the communities, so we would have kind of that schematic?
Sorry, I'm saying we can navigate the overlays. I'm saying maybe the one overlay that we don't apply is the current council districts.
Okay.
So we absolutely need to have the communities represented so that we can understand who's making up that population. But rather than us seeing lines on a page that kind of have us in a mental starting place of, well, this is what I have to do to move to get to, I'd like to see what the county population looks like. And please hear me, you all on the commission, everyone's staff, and anyone who might be at home. I'm not saying that we're going to, that we're necessarily going to find out anything that we may not already know. I'm just saying that that's the information that makes it easiest for me to make that discussion real.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Kai Ziegler?
So Steve Kai Ziegler, Planning and Zoning Officer. Yes, I think we can do exactly what you're saying. It's a separate layer, and it doesn't have political lines on a map. It's just population. I think what would also be helpful, we played around with this a little bit and went back in time. What did we have in the 2010 census? What did we have in the 2000 or 1990? Just going back 20 years, what we're finding is while the population is growing, in the last 10 years, we're growing at less than 1% per year. The percentage of the population, when you break it out demographically, has stayed pretty stable over the last 20 years. I didn't go back any further, but when we think of different groups within our population, we don't see significant changes overall for the whole county population. So when we get into smaller geographic areas, that may be more true, but we haven't identified it in the global the base population numbers. So that's just something I think interesting to know, but we can certainly produce the map you're thinking of. And I think, Mark, we need to go back probably, I'm going to say to 1990, base population plus basic demographic breakout, so that we can all see the change as the population grows. Is the percentage within that population also evolving? I don't think it's evolving a whole lot, though. There isn't a sea change in anything.
Mark Bart, Planning and Zoning. I will say that looking at census blocks going back every 10 years, they do change. They redraw them every 10 years to show the population. So being able to show a block for block,
Yeah. It's not apples to apples, and now
No,
we have adjusted
yeah.
population, adjusted, so there's changes, so
So it'll be like
it's close.
percent change.
It's close, but we can do that. And I think that would be helpful to your deliberations.
Okay, great. Mr. Kaufman, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. And the discussion about how drilled down it gets, I think that's the next layer of conversation that we have, that we, once we see an overlay and a global view as to really what we're trying to adjust, and then we get down to what the 2020 census netted, and then we're deciding between whether it's on which side of the street or not. But we're trying to identify our communities and identify that representation in a meaningful way. And the fact that it many times it's, the way that we've always done it is the reason that things continue to be broken moving forward. So,
Okay. Mr. Snow, go ahead.
I was actually just going to say that everything that you just described is exactly why I'm so concerned about using the current framework that we have. You just said that the demographic changes haven't really changed much at all, which means... What's that?
Countywide, the base
Right,
population.
yeah, exactly.
What we don't know is how much they may have changed within the subgroups of the base population.
But I think that it's important, to Commissioner Kaufman's point, that we not stay within I feel like we're limiting ourselves by staying within the confines of what we currently have. And I do feel like that community-wide, there is a desire to really, I don't know about restructure, but I think that, to your point, we've had this structure that's been in place back, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And I think that many communities, I can tell you firsthand, when we spend time in Pioneer City, they really feel like they have no ability to influence anything. And so we have the opportunity, and I know that it's, more comfortable to kind of stay within there. And I'm not, I'm not making any suggestions that we're going to dramatically change, but I think seeing the data, seeing our communities, the community overlay is important, the heat maps, all of those things, I think it could give us some perspectives that could just maybe offer something that's everyone's happy with, right? That can still meet the guidelines that we're looking for. So I think that earlier I'd mentioned that I had put some stuff together, but even then, I don't know if I want to necessarily move forward with that. I really much rather see what the heat map looks like, because that's the one thing I don't think I have seen quite yet, or at least clearly gotten a clear picture of the data that we have from this public tool. It may be okay, but you guys probably have better data for us to dig in. So I definitely want to echo everything that you're saying. I don't want to rush through this to just leave it the way that it is. Maybe it stays, maybe it changes. So that's all.
No, and if I could appreciate Steve Kaiser, Planning and Zoning Officer. No, I think I agree with you actually completely. I think what I was trying to say is that when we look at the base population numbers, the percentages within the base population haven't changed a great deal over the last 20 to 30 years. What I don't know is within smaller geographic areas, communities are evolving and changing. Certainly that could be the case, and that would influence that geographic area to have, in theory, more or less, I'm going to say in their long-term outcomes. So I think it's that as we break out the base population into the smaller demographic groups, and I know we don't want to necessarily look at the existing lines we have, although they do exist, is that at the end of the day, I think you can make any type of informed recommendation that you want to the county council. I'll give you a real quick example. Are you following what's happening in Prince George's County? They're going through this same process, they have 11 council members, and they had a redistricting commission just like you, who spent considerable time, developing a recommendation that the then a council member came up with his own map, and they were able to get 6 of the 11 council votes. And so at the end of the day, I think what the best with working with you can do is make an informed recommendation. And I think we're more than willing to tackle these finer parts of how we would produce different districts that make sense to this commission. So I think we can do that.
All right, Mr. Waddy.
Thank you, Stephen White. I was just wondering, for your, you said your fourth adjustment, I kind of missed some of the explanation in regards to that, about how it was being developed in regards to race.
High tech, low tech.
Okay, it's Mark Burt from Office of Planning and Zoning. So this one, what I looked at was more trying to bring the populations in line with the percent from deviation. In doing that, started to look at the percentages of the distribution of the race and ethnic breakdown throughout each district, with keeping in mind trying to lower the population of 4 and 1 to bring it closer to that target population. So you can see in this scenario, the population of District 4 really doesn't change too much. It still stays over 90,000 people, which isn't key for this, for redistricting, because it really takes us close, to that 5%. Where are we with 4?
We're staying within the recommended deviation.
Yeah, we're staying within the recommended deviations. So I just kind of took a look at it and started just distributing and trying to keep it within the deviation.
I understand. Stephen Whitey, is there a particular percentage in regards to these racial categories that you were looking at?
Not particularly. I was just trying to even out population, and was looking at all the racial categories, but the top 2 in the county, of course, the non-Hispanic or Latino white population and the non-Hispanic or Latino black population, because those are the 2 highest race and ethnic populations in the county.
And Stephen White, so there was the 20%, 28%, I think, in District 1, black, 46% white, 23% in District 2, black, 52% white, 10% in District 3, black, and 74% white, and 27% black in District 4, and 48% white, I see, for District 4 as well. I was just wondering, in terms of what Mr. Snow was mentioning in regards to having a large percentage of African Americans in one district, does this meet that?
Well, based on the total population of, the total percentage of the non-Hispanic and Latino black population in the county, the average is around 17%. So I would think a district that has anything above 17% is moving in the right direction. Although with this was just straight looking at census blocks and going, okay, I don't want to split up these communities. How much more can I add? But this put me over the threshold. I got to take back. Where can I take back?
I understand.
So it going in and truly taking a deep dive into race and ethnicity, this does not meet that. This is just a cursory first take.
So one of the ways to think about this is, as you're
I
right,
had a question for the Office of Law real quick. I'm sorry.
My fault.
I was wondering if the Office of Law had a baseline in terms of how the court might, or courts in general, might determine what is packing or cracking. That's what we're talking about, really. So is there, from these numbers, do you think that the court would see, or do you think the court would test whether or not there's a packing or cracking going on?
Kelly Kenny, Supervising County Attorney. You are, addressing one of the concerns that I'm kind of having as I'm sitting here, jotting down some of the questions that I want to look into. There's a lot of case law on this, and, until I know what this commission, I see where the commission is going now and the concerns and the things that you're looking at. So that gives me some more direction to know what I need to research and what I need to let everybody know, what you can and can't do within these parameters. So I think that this, I don't have an answer for you today. I would have to look at these numbers, look at the case law, and kind of analyze, where the discussion that we're having today, where the commission is going, and then let you know what I think that the case law, obviously I can only make a prediction. I don't know what any court would do, but I can give you some more parameters now, kind of understanding a little bit more. It's not so much in the abstract as it was, when we were talking last week. So I think that those are the things I was just writing down right now, is to look into and kind of give some more guidance when we're here the next time as well.
Thank you. And this is generally a discussion around 14th Amendment and Voting Rights Act that we're discussing, how racial representation would be seen within this council or within our voting population. And, are there particular aspects of the Voting Rights Act that you can think of, or, might be off of, maybe possibly bring to us in the future in regards to, those, whether or not it's Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that we'd be running up against, and then if we are running up against a particular, how to avoid running up against a particular Section 2 challenge in regards to packing and cracking. And then, because from what I understand from reading, I guess a little bit in between the last meeting and this meeting, is that the Supreme Court in its current, I think since Reynolds has looked at race kind of as a colorblind aspect, where it's not necessarily saying it's any race. It's not necessarily remedying past discrimination as we've been talking about here. It's if any race, feels discriminated against, even if they've been the ones that's been in power, they can then bring a racial discrimination suit, and it would be considered under strict scrutiny under that aspect of it. And I think that that's one thing that I think concerns me when I look at some of our possible packing and cracking. I just want to avoid having that possibility.
Yes, Kelly Kenny, Supervising County Attorney. As I indicated, that's, I think one thing that I want to look into, because that is one thing that does concern me as we're having these discussions tonight. It's not certainly saying that we can't do that, but I think that it would behoove me and this commission to give you a little bit of a summary now on these types of issues, now that I know what everybody's looking at, to let you know what what the different courts have looked at and what they have determined based on the types of challenges that come up. And some of the things that I was thinking as everybody was talking as well, if you kind of get back to the basics, that the whole purpose of redistricting is to accommodate those population shifts. So I know that there were a lot of other concerns that we're talking about, but that is the first and foremost primary goal of redistricting. So that's really what the premise should be. There is some indication, and I want to look at this as well, as you were having the discussion about kind of almost starting from square one or not looking at the lines that existed. There is some indication that you're supposed to start with the premise of where the lines are and then go from there. So I want to expound on that and give you a little bit more on that as well to make sure that if that is the goal, that we're not going too far afield and kind of starting over again. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kaufman, go ahead.
David Kaufman. Sorry. So I wholly and totally appreciate the scope and the desire and the need to remain in as firm a lane as possible. We're also a society that has had unprecedented effort to try and remedy and resolve historical structural biases. And we have an opportunity to be part of validating or correcting, because I'm not coming into the assumption saying that they are creating the kind of illegal or the types of concerns that it's not a predetermined conclusion, but we have an opportunity and a responsibility to, in the redistricting conversation, ensure that when you have transformational shifts within our county with regards to Spanish-speaking populations that aren't just a matter of switching the road from Veterans over to Crownsville Road. Those are issues and conversations we need to have, because we're talking about ensuring that our constituents, not our constituents, that we are represented by the government officials who are placed there, and because we have now greater gravity with regards to the school board, the impact there. This is that time. I get concerned when I see, the percentage of Anne Arundel County residents that are Latino is roughly 10%, okay? The fact of the matter is that isn't going to be geographically distributed around the entire county. We have pockets and we have areas, and so the goal of our redistricting is not to ensure that we have as close to 10% within each district as possible. It's to make sure that the communities that are natural are represented by their government officials. That's why I feel like I'm here, is to be part of that conversation moving it forward.
This is Stephen Whitey. I would say that would throw us, I've thought about that. And so how do we judge Latino civic engagement? Is it, how do I engage in civic engagement strategies as a political person? If I was a political person or a campaign person, how would I engage them? Through TikTok, or like I said earlier, whether it's Nielsen, or we would be looking at Nielsen ratings. We would be looking at the ratings for how or the FCC itself would look at civic engagement through media influence, right? And that may lead us to gerrymandering, and that's what the issue I think would be with that, is that there are populations in particular districts that are far flung. So we would run up against gerrymandering issues, and especially now that we're if we're talking about it, breaking them up or putting people in groups across these districts at a percentage that would allow them to be represented on, either the school board or, have influence over their representative.
So I guess if I could interject, Andrea Mansfield, I appreciate the conversation, and I think it's a valid conversation to have in different settings. I'm not sure as what our role is here. I'm obviously, from a voting perspective, and you mentioned TikTok and social media, I think that's kind of little bit separate and apart from what we are focusing on here. I mean, I think we need to do our job. I mean, I think the conversation, I think the iterations that we have talked about, that Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Snow were talking about, more with the heat map approach and trying to lay things out that way and see how these things naturally fall together, I think makes sense. I mean, I think, we have iterations that planning has put together for us. I mean, I would like to see the others broken down with the same type of racial and ethnic information that you included for Adjustment Plan 4. I mean, I would like to see the communities of interest added into this, but I think some of the issues, I mean, I don't know if I don't see our role necessarily as trying to make sure civic engagement of these various different populations. I mean, they're located in certain areas of the county, and I mean, we want to ensure whatever districts we draw, they're fair, equitable, and they provide for that type of input, and they provide for the ability for individuals to be come into elected office. But I mean, some of the issues, I don't know if, trying to control for things like that, I don't know if that's really our role here as the revision commission going forward. That's just my 2 cents. Mr. Snow?
Sure. I wanted to stress repeatedly that I'm thinking of this from a community focus. And when I say community, I mean geographic community. I mean your neighbors, where you go to school, where you shop, which is why I do believe that the community overlay is where we ought to be looking. It's part of the reason that I do believe that having those heat maps will tell us there. And just so everyone's clear on this, when I say that I am interested in representation, I'm interested in making sure that the geographic communities in Anne Arundel County are able to have an influence in our elections. Geographic communities, right? I'm not looking for, broader things. I know for a fact that there are a lot of people that live in large parts of this county that feel that their voice is just being diluted. And so a good map for this commission is going to be something that people can look at. It makes sense. It's not offensive. I can literally run through 3 different congressional districts from my house. That is offensive to me, right? We have the ability to look at this map in such a way that allows us to keep physical communities together. So I just wanted, as you guys are kind of looking at the data and all of those things, I'm thinking geography, the community overlays, communities of interest, like those are the things that I want to emphasize that I'm interested in. I think that's kind of what you're stressing as well. So I like the idea of keeping the scope, which is why I'm definitely willing, even with some of the other stuff that I'm doing, I'm totally willing to operate within the frame of scope. And I actually do believe, by the way, if you see the heat maps, it is, I am very confident that you will probably come to the same conclusions that I came to about how we should maybe make adjustments to this map.
Can I, Mr. Snow, do you have a particular percentage in regards to what you said? Over 50% is really what you said in terms of being able to have a particular racial representation.
No, there are portions on this map. You can pull up a heat map on some of these tools, and you can see where our communities of color specifically are concentrated. Like you can see where they are. I'm not necessarily looking at percentage. I'm saying, do the people that live in this area have a voice? And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to be at a certain percentage, but if someone is running for office, are they going to be knocking on doors in this community? That's what I want, right? To me, that is representation. And so if you look at a map and if you look at a heat map, it will become evident very, very quickly where these communities are and how they need to be represented and how things currently are designed in such a way that you have small, concentrated communities that are being overpowered by a broad stretch of the county, whether you have an equal or slightly more, that are just overwhelming those voices. The geography just doesn't make sense in some of these cases. So, like I said, I'm very interested to see what planning and zoning, when they give us those maps, if they come to similar conclusions as mine. I'm very, very curious. So I'm not looking at numbers necessarily.
Mr. Stowe, when you talk about representation, what's your concept, what's your understanding that you're looking to help us just get in the frame of mind of a community being represented.
If I'm running for office, I am not going to win this election if I don't go to this community. That's representation to me, right? Like, whether they look like that person or not, that person is going to be concerned that if a road goes unaddressed in a specific community and the community doesn't get attention from that elected representative, then that could jeopardize their future in that office. So that's why I'm thinking geography, right? The county addresses issues that impact us all: traffic, schools, roads. And at its fundamental premise, I am thinking in order for someone to hold office in this community, they will need to engage. They can't just rely on, oh, I'll just go visit this community over here and this community over here, raise a few dollars over here, and then those other people, they may get attention or not. It just depends if I have wild hair. So the numbers are not nearly as important as geography.
Okay. All right. Did you have another question?
I could talk with him for days.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think this is you guys can take it offline. How you want to debate doing these things. All right. So to bring us back then for where we're going for next steps, and actually, Mr. Telford, let me ask you if you have any comments or you'd like to make. You've been quiet sitting over there, so
I'm interested in seeing the heat map. I'm interested in seeing how Mr. Snow wants to put this map together. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think it'll address any concerns the law office has. Although I don't know how a county that has a long history of always having 7 white people on the council could possibly be accused of packing anything. But that, in fact, the one African American we had, we illegally kicked off. So anyway, that's what we'll.
Okay, thank you. All right. I guess then I'm going to move us forward to next steps. I guess one question I have, I guess to kind of quickly summarize, which I may already have done that a little bit. So for planning and zoning, and I guess we can talk timing. I know Monday isn't that far away, and there's a Thanksgiving holiday in the middle there. But generally speaking, we were talking about kind of doing a configuration using more of a heat map approach that would look at population centers, and we can kind of see how those things would align and then maybe naturally align to create districts. You were going to pull in kind of the racial and ethnic breakdown for the is that you have
if I could
comment on that one?
Yeah, if I could step in for a second. It's Mark Burt, Office of Planning and Zoning. In the packets you received that have just the maps on the front, you will find a table titled District Statistical Report, and that does have all the race and ethnic breakdown for each district, for each scenario. I just put it on the screen for scenario 4, but it is included in your packets.
Okay.
And we realized you didn't have any time to review it because we were still working on it today. And that's one of the issues we're going to have with how much time we have to do the work.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. And then you will do the overlay with the communities of interest. And you will also do that in this, the heat map kind of population approach as well, so we can see where those fall and overlay those in the other scenarios too. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess realistically, I know we have our meeting on Monday. I guess when will you have the information together for us to take a look? That's probably a lot.
We really only have one day of work to do this. I'm not going to ask Mr. Burke to work on Thanksgiving, if that's all right. So we have one full day to do this in order to get it to you in time to have any time to review the materials.
I would, Mark Burt, Office of Planning and Zoning, I would say if I can get some virtual or some web maps standing up in your hands, I think a lot of this data would be included in there, including the community boundaries, the current census blocks, the adjusted census blocks, the community boundaries, school districts, all that stuff that we've been talking about, including in a map. In one map, so you can turn each scenario on and off. I have one started. I just haven't had a chance to Mr. Kaufman, if you don't mind. Thank you, sir. Input second up from the bottom. Yep. And then use one of the plus and minus. Use one of the plus and minuses to get the power.
It's testing.
Uh-oh.
They came back on. Sorry about that. That's okay. I did that earlier too. All right. Yeah. Now, yeah, it's either one of the plus or minus buttons to move it over to HDMI 2, please. Thank you, sir.
And then just leave it?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the assist there, Mr. Kaufman. Certainly. So what we're looking at on the screen now is a web map based in ArcGIS. It's in our staging portal right now, which is our sandbox to create before we move it to the main stage, where everyone can have access to this. I do have all 4 scenarios in here. I have the community boundaries, the adjusted census blocks. The only stuff I really need to add in are the school district boundaries and any other political boundary that we may need. The web map does allow you to pick census block and get that population for that census block. It will also allow you to look at what community and adjust it. What I can do is I can pull this into a dashboard, so when you click on one thing, you get all the statistics you're looking for in one place. I think that's doable for one day. I know I can get that stood up. The question is, can we get it turned around and available to you? That's something I would have to work out with our Office of Information Technology.
There's other parties who are participating who aren't necessarily sitting in the room. If I could just, there was something, Steve Kazegler, Planning and Zoning Officer, I realized I used the term school districts. I was not referring to the political districts that follow the councilmatic districts. What I was referring to is how the Board of Education districts in relation to feeder systems, high schools. So that's what I was speaking on to that. So if I caused any confusion, my apologies.
That's fine. Okay. Mr. Snow, go ahead.
Technical question. On that map,
Yes,
you
sir.
have the layers for the community boundaries and ostensibly the school districts. Is there the functionality to be able to select a region and see the demographic data for it? So I think I saw that you could do census block, but could I click on that map in a specific community and see the demographic data of that community?
To the block group.
With some data processing.
So it's not as simple.
It's not as simple. I would have to go in and select that, pre-select everything, attach that data to that geography.
You're making custom maps and data. So we have, it's good with Census Tract. It goes down to the block group. Those geographic boundaries are not necessarily going to mirror a community. In theory, they're supposed to, but we know they don't. And block groups and sometimes census tracts change with each census for various reasons.
Is the data available in a spreadsheet format in which the census block has attributes labeled to it? Does that make sense?
For the community?
Correct. So, for example, if you click on that census block, does the application know that it is part of a certain community?
It will, in a roundabout way, yes, it does kind of know. So if you click on this adjusted census block here, and you can see that you have this right arrow in the top of the pop-up, you can cycle through and get to that community where you clicked on that census block. The census blocks are not assigned to the communities for the fact that what Mr. Kai-Ziegler alluded to is that they don't follow boundaries.
So you can do a data extract and it wouldn't say this block is tied to this community?
It wouldn't be a one-to-one matchup. It might be a many-to-one. It might be a many-to-many relationship.
But it does, okay.
I would have to run some tools in the GIS to get it there. But
Okay.
This is Stephen Whitey. Does the precinct map match similar to that, or are we able to do precinct mapping? Or?
We can bring in the voting precincts if that's what you're referring to, Mr. Waddy.
I would prefer voting precincts, and you know, I also did have a request for the partisan voter registration to be overlaid as well, if that's possible.
That's, again, when you make individual requests, we're adding workload where we have one full day to do work to get you information. So
I don't need it by next week, so it was a request. I know I needed to make it verbally at this meeting, so I'm just putting the brainstorm out there, unfortunately.
I understand. Keep in mind, I'm going to just remind everybody, Steve Kazigger, Planning and Zoning Officer, the reason that if you remember our first couple of meetings, we wanted all the requests to occur in a public setting, so the public who is watching understands your deliberation, and then organized, kind of coordinated through Laura. So if we really want to discourage any of you from reaching out to us and saying, can you do this for me? Because it's not happening in the public arena. And I don't think that will help your effort overall.
Okay. I'm going to throw this out there, even though I know we discussed meeting dates and so forth, but we had November 30th as an alternate, as another date. And I think we had a quorum. I guess I'm just wondering if we move the 29th to the 30th, if that gives you more time to pull this information together. But I also want to be looking at the commission members in terms of whether that's something to consider. I mean, I know you guys are really in a crunch right now. I was wondering if that gives you enough time. But then I know we're also scheduled to meet again on December 1st. So that may not help you either.
I think any more time we can have to do the work is just going to be appreciated. Some of this is a bigger haul than you might think, and I know that Mark and his staff put tremendous amount of time, and we're still working on tonight's assignments basically this afternoon, and it's not because we don't want to do it, it's because it takes time.
Yeah. Mr. Kaufman? Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, David Kaufman. I think that if you're able to come to the next meeting with the heat maps that were discussed earlier to address population centers in the county and variation, that's information that you can give us for the Monday night meeting. Gives you Tuesday, Wednesday to be able to then have for Wednesday. I absolutely agree that if we have another day, it would make this task a whole lot more manageable. But I think that just being able to have that Monday, Wednesday, since we're finally speaking and thinking in terms of how to adjust or how we want to deal with this task rather than just getting the onboarding taken care of. So now we're at a place where we can have the substantive conversations with you. This first layer is something that I think seemed to be clear in terms of what we can get accomplished for Monday. And I just, for me, the value is, and it's to the law office whose hair was probably sticking up on the back of their neck when I was talking about not having the current districts be part of the overlay. It's not a matter of dismissal, but I can't speak to whether or not a population is a geographic community has been broken up or not, if the starting point is the current councilmanic districts rather than the starting point being the community populations. For me, that's the starting point of the conversation. So I don't want you to think that I'm dismissive of our legal responsibility here, but numbers on a spreadsheet don't tell me where the people are within what are large sections of population. And that's the challenge for me as a visual learner, to see where our populations reside.
Yep. Mr. Snow?
Along with that, I do wonder if, I think part of the challenge that we're dealing with is we're trying to squeeze a lot of work into a very short amount of time. And I guess my real thought is if we're going to do this right, obviously in order for us to do some of the analysis that you're looking at, if we want to see demographic, as I understand it right now, we have to click on each individual census tract, right, to see what that makeout is, and unless there's more work done, is that you would have to do some processing in order for us to click on the map and see this community has this demographic layout, we can't intrinsically do that, correct? Without a lot of work on your end. And so I was going to say to the commission, does it make sense to give the planning team time to give us that overlay so that, because I mean, honestly, none of this makes it doesn't add any value. I mean, right now we have the maps and you have the demographic data, but that's based on, the aggregate data is based on lines that are already there. And so if we want to see what this scenario looks like without the framework to be able to compile that data to see if we put these communities together, we see, these lines drawn, that's the demographic layout. Even if we have like a heat map, does that still add value to the fellow commissioners that are looking at this, or would you need to see it at the aggregate level?
I guess my thought is if we have the heat map and we have the communities outlined on that, that would at least, we would be able to see where those population centers are and how those things break down. At least that we could have that to discuss, and then,
Sure.
Then we could go from there to kind of see how that fits in with the current lines of the districts and how we may want to shift things at that point. Mr. Kai-Ziegler?
So Steve Kai-Ziegler, Planning and Zoning Officer. I think there's a lot of value in the heat map. And I think there's value in understanding that we need to start from where we ended up in 2010 and 11. That's fine. But now you're in a new task to evaluate that in relation to what changes you might want to make. And part of the logical assessment of information is a heat map. So I think one of the ways of looking at a heat map is without the district lines on it. And once you see the heat map, while you know what you have and why we did what we have, it may make sense to consider changes. What I will tell you is that we can do the technical work to create districts that achieve what this commission wants to achieve. Whatever that may be at the end of this, we can do that. We can do it all kinds of different ways. And our goal is, whatever that might be, we're going to try and do it where the maps, the districts, don't look like an octopus, so that they're rational and legally defensible. And that's why we have, some really good attorneys in the room helping to guide us. So we know we can do that. We were anticipating, we had to show you the base stuff so that you could have the start of the real conversation tonight. And now I think it's time to start. I mean, we're kind of leapfrogging because we don't have a lot of time. We're going to leapfrog into the real things you want to get at. And I think a great start is the heat map without district lines. And then we can show you, if you put district lines, here's what it would look like. And you may say, why did we do what we did 10 years ago? But we did. And what would you like to see different? What is our objective in the recommendations you'll make to the council? And that'll start to happen, I think, a lot faster than you think. We're now into the nitty-gritty of it, actually.
Okay. And that's something you think, so for Monday's meeting, you could have that ready for us to look at.
We're going to give you everything we can that I'm going to say developed by, if we have product done by the end of the day tomorrow, we'll get it to you so you can look at that. Otherwise, we will continue working for Monday night, and you just may not have a lot of time to review it. I'm sorry, it's just we don't have a lot of work days to do this.
No, that's fine.
We'll do everything we can to staff you.
Sounds good. Mr. Snow? Go ahead.
And to that point, and I think what I really want to get at is that I'm thinking about the turnaround time with these, let's say that we have this meeting Monday night, and then we're supposed to meet again Wednesday, correct? And so does it even make sense to even plan to have a meeting if we deliberate and decide on, this is how we want to go? Again, we're putting you in the same exact situation that we're putting you in right now, where you have 1 day to turn around something, and we won't even get to see it until we come to the meeting. Are we still committed to this aggressive meeting schedule, knowing the constraints that we have right now?
Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Mark Wright, Office of Planning and Zoning. To speak to your point about the compressed work and going back and doing things and coming, me going back to the office, doing the work, coming back to the commission and that back and forth. We can do things live right here if we wanted to. We have the technology, we have the capabilities to do that. if there's a will, I can sit here and move lines while we talk about it.
Right. Remember,
we have the software to do this.
We talked about this last time, and I was asking, can we do this in real time? And he's figured out how to do it. So in future meetings, we're going to be having real work sessions, working through things while we're all meeting together. We don't want to ask you not to meet. If we can't produce something, we can have a discussion at that point and, give a recommendation that we don't have anything to share, but that's not our intent.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. I mean, I don't want to, we have a schedule that we have approved and how we think we're going to move forward. I think if we find ourselves in a situation where it's impossible or we can't do that, I think maybe we address it at that point. I guess for me personally, I'm feeling like maybe once we have this heat map with the overlay of the communities of interest on there, I think it might make, especially if we have that already laid out and then you start drawing the lines, it's a little more, it's more visual, and I think it would be easier for me to see exactly how those things line and what's falling into which district. I think it would be easier for me to understand and kind of actually be able to talk through in more detail. But I know, Mr. Waddy, your light was on.
I do think we should continue with the current meeting schedule, and I think I just want to say that Mr. Kaufman's discussion earlier about the philosophical understandings of things speaks more to the Office of Law's ability to help us guide our discussion as opposed to the Office of Planning and Zoning, which, so I think we can develop a little bit further where we're all coming from in what we're looking for, along those lines of what is a community of interest, and how do we identify what is contiguous and what is compact, and along those lines around what philosophically or ideologically, where are we going in this county to understand our future over at least the next 10 years, and where we've been over the past 200 some years. I think is be a good, I don't mean to have a 200-year-long discussion, but I do want to say, I appreciate having that discussion because we all see how momentous, this moment is. And I did want to say that there's, other counties that we're putting this in front of our county council. Our county council is not another county's county council. And I think, from what I understand, they appointed us and they have given us this mandate. And so I definitely think they'll take the time to listen to what it is that we have to say in a thoughtful manner, and take it as something to move forward with our input. So that's what.
Okay, Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, David Kaufman. So as the multiple maps demonstrate, there are probably countless ways to justify whatever you ask somebody, well, do you have data for that? Well, everyone's got a data point to prove their point, which unfortunately so many times renders data less meaningful because we know how manipulative that is. It is why I appreciate the receptiveness that you have of having that starting point next week with our population centers, because at the end of this, when we distill all of this conversation down, we're talking about the representation of the people of Anne Arundel County, period. That's why it's in the charter amendment. That's why it's responsible for us every 10 years to do it, so that we can adapt with the sensibilities and the population changes and the needs of our community. So I appreciate that we're in a mindset to be able to have that and allow the product that we recommend to the council to be that which represents our view of how Anne Arundel County is represented. And then hope that 5 people or 4 people, I guess, on the council agree with us. So.
Yep. So, okay. All right. Any further comments or things about where we're sitting? Okay. Do you guys have clear enough direction? Need us to reiterate anything, or we're good there? Okay. Okay. Great. All right.
Madam Chair, I do have a question. So when this Mark Burt, Planning and Zoning, when we talk about heat maps, do you want to see the blocks represented with their population for the different race and ethnicity throughout, or do you want a traditional heat map showing like that statistical span?
So I'm going to speak for myself, but I do not believe that my request on heat maps is comprehensive to the other members of the council here. For me, the starting point is to identify where are our population centers throughout the county, where are we seeing density in population, and what demographic information about our populations can we glean between now and Monday among that information. That's the starting point for me to understand whether or not it makes sense to have this district, or whether or not all of the 10% are all living on each of the geographic lines that abut each of these 4 districts here. I just can't see that in a spreadsheet. So for me, that's as simple as I'm looking for, is to be able to find out where our population and demographic representations within our county are. I don't want to.
Do you need to see the change from 2010 to 2020?
So the variation would inform the next step in the conversation. But for Monday's meeting, that change is actually, to me, less consequential, because it's what does our county look like now? Mm-hmm. Now we can take a look at the change in that next step to say, okay, let's take a look at why they made the decisions they did 10 years ago and determine whether or not there's been any kind of exodus, whether there's been a lot of migration, whatever that may be within a district. But for me, it sounds to me, and again, I really don't want to put words in anyone else's mouth. It feels like we're trying to generate as authentic a representative map as possible, and find 7 groupings of communities that find representation on the council.
Understood. Mark Burt, Planning and Zoning. So does the map on the screen meet your criteria of a heat map, or because this is population distribution and it kind of has that heat feel to it? This is total population distribution based on the 2020 adjusted numbers. And this is at the census block level.
I guess could you describe it in a little more detail? I'm having a hard time.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, my apologies. My apologies.
I will say, I know
My
that
apologies.
Mr. Waddy was able to read the percentages in the racial and ethnicity chart, and I was sitting there like, really? Is that what that says? I have no idea.
100%. Yeah, I get it. So anywhere red on the map, like dark red, on the outside here, are census blocks that do not have population, 0 population. Where it gets a little orange into the oranges, that's the range of 0 to 1, or 1,096, or to 1,296 people to 2,591. So orange is kind of like that beginning population kind of. The yellows into the bright greens. I know that the color differentiation isn't that good. This is a poor map for colorblind people to look at. The yellows are going higher up in the population. The high end of that is around 33,886 people. Going into the greens is where you get up into our higher population. So those are the denser areas in the county. So anywhere on the map that you see green, you're looking anywhere from 3,887 people all the way up to 6,479 people.
So do you mind if I come down?
No, come on down.
So if I'm, and the perspective looks a little bit different here, but if I'm looking at this correctly, am I seeing that in this particular iteration, this population is broken?
So we're looking at Plan 1. Let me turn Plan 1 on for you.
And again, just as a
or which, so the current scenario right now is the base scenario. Let me switch it to the plan one so we can compare them here. And it'll just take me a second to open that file. Okay, let me unlock the district so it'll take that hatch mark off.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it.
Now, I'll leave the coloring of the districts on the map just because we don't have a clear one with them. So now if you, so if we look at that and where you were asking.
So this line right here dissects the two greens.
Yeah, it dissects the two greens. So with this plan to try, the first plan was trying to even out the population, across the board. Areas of high population like that will be kept separate because you're going to put one district over your 10% threshold away from your ideal population. So looking at that, going, oh yeah, if you're taking that approach, it makes 100% complete total sense. No, we're also looking over here in District 3 at this high, there's a high concentration of population right here. If you look out, in the center of District 3, it's kind of a little more sparsely populated.
Yeah, and so probably overlap or redistricting outline one is probably the worst one for me to have pointed to because it was the one that we said from the very beginning was the least likely because it just went with math. Mm-hmm. But it is the most illustrative, though, of why we're looking to seek out this a geographically small district with the appropriate amount of population in it. We obviously recognize that the other way around with the southern end of the county. We have an enormous district that is. Oh. David Kaufman was just speaking previously. So, sorry about that. The answer to your question is yes, that's very helpful. Being able to do that in real time was also particularly helpful, and navigating information points. So it's not that I don't want to see where our districts exist, it's that I don't want that to be the starting point because representation isn't from the district lines of 10 years ago.
So is it okay if we all gather around the TV the next time if we're going to do this in real time? Okay.
Most definitely.
So, okay, great. All right. Oh, Mr. Telford, sorry.
Larry Telford. Mr. Burt, here it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 iterations for that map. Is that correct?
For this one?
There's red, orange, yellow, and green, right?
Oh yeah, the population breakdown?
Yes.
Yeah, there's 4 categories. They can be broken out for.
Is there maybe Mr. Snow and Waddy want to chime in here? How many iterations would you like to see for this heat map? Since, if we had one iteration, it'd be one color for the whole county, so that wouldn't tell us anything. But if there are 28, it might confuse us completely. So, do you have any thoughts on what kind of ranges you would want to look at?
Go ahead, Mr. Snow. I guess can I ask, I don't understand, I guess I'm not sure. We have 7 council districts. That's where are you suggesting?
But if we're talking about demographic iterations, you could go from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 30 to 40, 40 to 50s. But my point is there some kind of protocol for doing something like this?
Madam Chair, if you don't mind. Mark Burt, FPZ. The way that it's broken down right now is the way that the computer or the way the program decided to break it down. all this data has been taken out of here, out of this program, has been able to bring it, we can bring it into the desktop software, which will allow us to manipulate it in more fine-grained ways, to develop a chloropleth map like this, showing the population.
Okay.
However we want. So typically, when I'm making a map like this, I'll use natural breaks. I'll break the data at those natural points, so kind of getting almost an even distribution throughout. But there are different statistical ways you can break up the data. I'm sure Mr. Snow could talk some about also.
Well, no, I was going to say this is sufficient. The only thing I would like to see is I would like to be able to see different data sets. So I'd like to see a similar heat map for some of our demographics. So that's the only thing I was going to say. But I like the 5 is plenty.
I got you 100% on that. And the different, so what they're called themes within RTS redistricting. And right now we're looking at just the universe, the standard total population. If we go, the universe is that standard total. If we go into the standard, that's where we can get into the different ethnic and racial breakdowns. So if we wanted to see the distribution of Hispanic or Latino population, is to update the map and it redistributes based on that population selected. So we can go down all the way down to non-Hispanic, Latino, 2 races or more at the block level.
Okay, great.
And Larry Tuff, just one more issue. Is there a way you can share this information with us on our laptops as we get into this?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So I should bring my laptop next time, right?
If you would like to bring your laptop next time, the web map that I had up earlier is something that we're going to try to get shared out to everyone, and it will have the census blocks in it. I can break them, symbolize them based on the different race and ethnicity categories that are within the census, if that would be helpful for everyone, just so you can toggle those on and off. So that is something else that I'll add into that web map. But like I said, that web map's probably going to be the easiest, most efficient way to get this to you. So I'll work to get this done, to get this published and out to you guys, so we can view this for Monday.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Burt. Appreciate that. I guess anyone have any further comments or questions at this point? We have, all right, more direction for the next meeting. That's great. All right, moving on, other business. I know Mr. Waddy was kind of reminding me, I know we have the Monday, we have December 1st, we have the 2 public hearings on our schedule, but we don't have a date scheduled for us to come back together to discuss all the input that we received to give the final approval to any districts. So I know that's still a date that we need to determine at some point. I'm not sure if we want to have that discussion tonight. But I think that's something we definitely need to put on our calendars as we kind of move forward. Maybe that would be a discussion for next week when we get a better sense as to how these districts are coming together for our public hearing. So, yes. Yes, Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, David Kaufman. Excuse me. Do we have any sense as to how much input has been submitted, if any? Is it dozens? Is it singular?
One submission that came in today, actually.
Okay.
So I did share that it's in the, my apologies. There was one submission that was shared. Has everyone been able to access the Google Drive? I did see a couple of requests. Mr. Snow with the Gmail. I got one from Mr. Fleckenstein, which will help a lot too. But anyway, it seems like the Google Drive is going to work better. Everybody's been able to access it? Mm-hmm. Okay. So there is a Google sheet, which is kind of a simplified Excel sheet in there, and I will maintain that. I'll probably ask for the data about once a week, and I will just plug it in for you. Okay?
Great. That's good. All right, Mr. Snow?
Yeah, regarding the follow-up session, Tori Snow, by the way, are we thinking of meeting Christmas week or between New Year's? Was that, I guess really what I was thinking, maybe
we could meet the first week of January, because I think that would still give us time to finalize districts and still get them to the council before they meet. That way we'd have time to then kind of read through any comments or think about the public comments. I think Christmas, I know Christmas week is hard. I'm going to be out of town right after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, so I know I can't do that, which is why I was thinking we could, like the first week of January, maybe we could find a date.
I'm in the same boat. Okay, so I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yep. Yeah.
So I can, David Kaufman, I can participate virtually during that first week of January, but I'm in Dallas for a conference.
Okay.
But with the understanding that, again, if there's an opportunity to participate virtually, I can, and don't want to hold up the work of the commission.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll take that in consideration. Yeah, I think we'll see how the next couple meetings go and then kind of figure out when we want to do that at that point. All right, any other items under other business? All right, seeing none, I guess can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. All right, thanks, everybody.